Hey guys, welcome back to the Freedom Kickstarter podcast. Today's guest is Josh Aghdam. So, hand it over to the guest right away. So, Josh, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and what you do?
I'm a business owner. I'm a dad, and now I'm running a sales agency. Been a
Like it.
business owner for 11 years. Um, Stepped away from a few recently, and yeah, all in on this new business that I'm running at the moment.
Nice one. So, the reason I wanted to get you on is because essentially, as I understand it, kind of sales is your thing. Obviously, wore many hats, run lots of businesses. But what got you interested in sales in the first place?
I think so. I went straight into work when I was 16. I got a job at a bank when you were supposed to be 18, and managed to kind of blag my way in. I definitely wasn't into sales. I think when you're 16, you've not got many skills, and people will just chuck you into anything that they can make value out of you from. So I had to learn to sell quick, and I was selling mortgages and loans and stuff when I was 16. And if you're selling loans and mortgages when you're 16 and look 12, you have to get pretty good at sales to be able to get anybody over the line. So very quickly, I got good at it, and then over the years, I've done phone sales, face-to-face sales, selling all sorts of different things, and the bank was really where I realised that I had a bit of a skill for it and had to fast track because if I'm being honest, I left school probably with next to no skills apart from decent level communication, low qualifications. So I had to figure out quickly what I was going to get good at and get paid for.
Do you find you were sort of naturally good at sales before that? Like, I know there's this thing that generally people who've got the gift of the gab are good at selling stuff. Was that you, or was it something that you actually had to try quite hard to learn?
I think I've always had the gift of the gab with people that I'm comfortable with. I definitely was shy, so I can't pretend that I'd walk into a room and take over any room. I felt, looking back, I was always a bit entrepreneurial. I grew up on car boot sales and things like that. And I think you develop little skills from that, seeing adults interact and bargaining and things along those lines. Um, but it's definitely something that maybe, because what I would say was I was a shy kid, and literally on the spot as you're asking me, I was probably the kind of person that would often be listening rather than talking a lot of the time. And I think as I've got older, I've realised that that's allowed me to understand human behaviour maybe than a lot of people. And then obviously understanding human behaviour and what makes people tick a little bit than the average person, I like to think, allows me to understand why people might buy and how to stroke someone's ego when needed and how to persuade somebody when needed, etc. So I guess that was me building sales skills, because obviously there's a lot more to sales than just having multiple closes at your disposal. Understanding when to say something and when to pause, etc., is key, and I think you can learn that by actually listening and watching people.
I think the listening thing is interesting because I often hear people say, like, oh, I'm no good at sales, so I'm not talkative, or I'm not outgoing, I'm
Mm.
very introverted. And to me, it's almost like, well, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but a good salesperson should probably listen more than they talk. And that's always what I try and do. I don't class myself as a salesperson at all, but if I am talking to someone about a sale, I'll always make it a point where I kind of ask them a question and just sit back and listen. Would you say that's the right approach, or do you think you do need to be kind of talkative? You need to be outgoing, extroverted, all that kind of stuff?
I think what your sales style is should be an extension of your personality. I think there's a lot of people out there that teach sales tactics, etc., and I think a lot of people would feel uncomfortable doing those tactics. They might work for the individual teaching them, but if that's not you and you're not the kind of person that's going to dominate a conversation or shout people down or call people out when you probably don't even think there's a reason to call them out, I think it's going to come across as inauthentic. And for me, when I'm buying off somebody, I've always said this. I will, let's say I'm going to go to a car showroom, and I've not been to one recently, so I'm not buying any Lexuses or anything. But let's say I'm going to a car showroom. I want to feel good while I'm buying. I want them to make the experience fun. I want to be smiling. And that's when I start to get carried away and I think, I'll have one of them, I'll have one of them, and I'll buy this. I've never been a believer in making people feel like crap to make them buy. If people make me feel like crap or call me out or bring up my son because I mentioned at the beginning of the call or something, you're actually going to get my back up. And if you get my back up, I'm not going to buy. So I do believe there's probably a place for that and it works for some people. But for me personally, I will always sell to my clients, customers, like I would sell to my friends trying to get them on a night out. That's why I always say it should be your personality and it should just be turned up slightly up a notch, I guess, just to lead the conversation where needed. But if you're like, as I said to you off camera, that I think you're a really good salesperson, you might be surprised to hear that. But I think because you do it your way and it's authentic and you stick to your values and it's consistent and you build trust, it works. Because ultimately, when you're buying off somebody, you should trust. I personally think slightly like as well. A lot of people disagree, and have some rapport. And because people buy off people at the end of the day, and that's never going to change, and that's how it used to be. And relationships in sales is probably the most key thing, in my opinion.
Well, I think it's interesting because I think it was a few weeks ago I went to look at a new co-working space, and guy was great, sort of very natural, talked quite a bit. And the minute sort of I started to bring out some objections about being tied into a year's contract, I wouldn't say he got pushy, but it sort of felt like his personality entirely shifted.
Yeah.
And he talked about, well, we need people who are like committed to their businesses and who are driven and all that kind of stuff. And it got my back up slightly. Yeah. And then it was quite a big financial commitment as well. It was sort of a few £100 a month plus VAT plus a joining fee. And he said to me something like, well, if you join up by Friday, I'll buy you lunch on your first day. And I thought, that's a nice offer, but essentially you're going to buy me a £10 sandwich and a Diet Coke for equivalent of about £4,000 investment. And that's not me being dismissive, but it just felt one of those that was a bit, as you say, it wasn't an extension of him. I'd liked him as a person we were talking normally. The minute I showed some resistance to the sale, it was almost like the whole experience shifted. And actually, it kind of put me off, to be honest.
And it should do it, because I think at that point, when you've pushed back, he probably should have shown some empathy. If he understands business owners, he should be saying, look, I get it. 12-month commitment is quite hard to do, but I know what you're like. You probably do think 12 months ahead, at least. So, and that's the angle that I took. I'll start to empathize with you. Say that, stroke your ego a little bit. You probably plan 12 months ahead. You probably can afford this. And I totally understand you probably need to figure out your numbers. Let's see if we can figure it out. And then immediately your back's not up. You're starting to think that you're working together, because I think a sale should be working together. And then you actually naturally then want to work with him. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And I think as well, there is too much of an emphasis in sales of people trying to get people over the line no matter what in that moment. I think if it isn't a good fit, and I've had this with many people, they've literally gone, look, I don't know if it is a good fit. They don't say this, but what they're saying in that moment is, let's keep the relationship. Let's not lose the trust, and maybe we can work together down the line. And I've done that many times, where I'll do that, I get the respect, and I actually do end up working with them down the line on a much bigger deal. But what a lot of people do is, if they can't get that sale there and then, they wind you up, they push you away, and that's the end of that relationship. And if you're here to stay in the game that you're in, you should be thinking longer term, I think.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of a slightly different scenario, but I had a guy years ago, bought one of my courses and asked to refund within a couple of days. And I sort of just did it, kept, part of me, I wouldn't say it got my back up, but part of me was like, I think his reason for refunding is a bit crap, to be honest. But I was like, look, doesn't matter. I'd known him online for a bit, so refund, wish him the best, that kind of thing. A few months later, he came back and bought a different course off me. Yeah. Then he had some one-on-one mentoring. Then I think he joined a group program I had, and he subscribed to one of my newsletters. And it's kind of, we're about probably 7 years down the road now. That guy has probably spent 15 grand with me, because I refunded that initial £500 sale. And I see it as very similar in terms of, sometimes you have to say no to the money today, or you have to just accept the money's not going to be there today, in order to then later down the line have that relationship where someone does go, oh, you've got an offer there that's 10 times the price of that first one, but because I had that positive interaction, I now want to spend that money with you.
Yeah, and obviously, because when you're dealing with clients, customers, whatever you want to call people in that scenario, they don't know you that well. They might know a few things about you. So you've told him more in that interaction than they probably knew about you all the way leading up to that interaction. And clearly he liked what he found out about you. So he then has trust to buy something off you again, because he knows that you refund quick if it's not what he was looking for. And like you say, it's paid off long term. But I think a lot of people do have short-term mindsets when it comes to sales and business. And I think if you look at a lot of the biggest players in business, everything they do is long-term. And of course, when you're starting in business or you're early on, there is always a time where you're like, I need to get people over the line today. We can't all wait for money tomorrow. But I think if you can get to a place where you can do that, or you can do a bit of both, then that's the best place to be in. But at the same time, it goes back to not selling crap as well, first things first. I think you should always be selling something that you think is a good fit for your client.
And we were talking beforehand, you said about your approach is like if you bumped into someone who you tried to sell to, you would want them to feel like positive feelings towards you. You wouldn't want there to be animosity. So do you mind going a bit more into that? Like how do you foster that relationship in the sales process?
Yeah, so I believe first things first, the relationship's the most important thing. That's the way I've always sold, because obviously starting in a bank, they're your customers that are coming in every day. So you're not going to kind of burn that bridge with them. You're going to have to see them today. And I guess some of it comes from that. Later down the line, I worked in face-to-face sales, selling supplements, and these are your regular customers. You sell them something, the next time you might sell them 2 things, then 3 things. And once you build that trust, it becomes more, 4 things, 5 things, 6 things. So I just think that the relationship is always the most important part, because I think and that's not just my opinion. If you look at anything, it's often the person with the best relationship with the boss that gets the job. Or, I mean, I'm no political expert, but I listened to a podcast recently that shows that the candidate with the most charisma gets the presidency most of the time, because they're connecting with the audience better than anybody else. And if you like somebody, you'll generally take on board what they're saying more. So the relationship should always be the base. And to go back to what you said about I would sell in a way where I'd be happy to bump into him tomorrow, it comes back to that. I always want to protect the relationship, sell, but never at the detriment of the relationship. It should be, because when you speak to people about sales who maybe don't see themselves as a salesperson, they'll often say things like, I don't feel comfortable, I don't like it, I don't want to be seen as that. But that's all because they have negative connotations to what people would generally sell. If you're selling something good and you've got a great product and you know people are going to thank you for it later, you should be really keen to sell, and you will ask again. And like I said to you off camera, that I'm not the kind of person that's going to follow up 7 or 8 times if people aren't clicking with it. But if I do think it's a good fit and they've given me good interactions, I'll probably follow up 100 times, in the same way that I would ask my mate 100 times, are you sure you don't want to come out tonight? Because I know it's going to be a good night. Do you know what I mean? Like, if I ask a mate who's not keen and I think it's not his scene or it's not her scene, probably won't ask more than once. I'll just ask. No? Okay, probably right anyway. But if you're like, this person is going to love this night, and I know they really want to come, they're just being funny about something, money or whatever, then you'll find a way. And that's how I see it when you're selling a good product.
On that theme, I guess going off that a bit, it's kind of like if you had that friend, you knew they'd been through a tough time, maybe they'd had a breakup or something like that, and you could see that staying in was probably going to make them feel a bit worse. They feel a bit isolated, a bit lonely. Like you say, you would try because you know it's in their best interest. So I suppose it's that thing of start with a great product you know can solve someone's problem. Make sure you understand their problem, where they're at, and then if you do get resistance, look for logical ways to tackle that. Like, don't find some magical close, don't find some special 3-word phrase that some guru's told you to do. Just logically and emotionally lay out that case for, look, here's why I think you should go for this.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest obstacles I see with selling, where I think it's worth fighting against, is when people are not buying because they're not connecting with the products. And I think when you've got a relationship with the person, it's easier to kind of work together to break through that confusion. So a lot of the time I'll see that, because the biggest obstacle, like I say, if they don't quite get it, they feel like they need to go away and figure out what buying this product will do for them, or how it will look, or how it will feel. So I'll often put time into that, and if I feel that people are saying no because they're just not sure it marries up, or even what option they want to go for, if you've got multiple offerings and whatnot, they might think, I know I want to work with you, but I don't know if it's option 1, 2, or 3. That's where it's worth pushing back and being like, let's actually sort this out right now, because going away isn't going to do that. You need me here to actually help you between option 1, 2, and 3. And that's where I'd also, if I was working with somebody in sales, help them to work on the process before the conversation happens, because I do feel like a lot of sales are lost before. Like, people see sales as the conversation, the back and forth, but for me, a lot of the time, the sale is done before that, making it really clear to understand what you do, what you're offering, which a lot of people I think are terrible at, because then when the conversation happens, they're almost ready to buy. They just want to understand it. They want to confirm a couple of things. They want to just check who you are and if it's someone that they want to work with. And they should be able to get to a yes quite quickly, whereas a lot of people, they like you, they like the idea of the product, but they just don't quite know how to pursue forward with it. So that's where it would be a different issue.
We've probably touched on some of this already, but what would you say are the biggest myths around sales?
I think the biggest myth is that it's a dirty word, first of all. I think if I was to describe a salesperson, it would probably be very different to how the general public would describe a salesperson. If you look at all the biggest earners in the world, they're all salespeople. I do think it's probably the number one skill out there. If you can't sell, it's very difficult to get to the top in any of your fields. And again, what I probably would describe as a salesperson is very different to what most people would. You don't need to like talk over people, be 100 miles an hour, be dead quick, gift of the gab. You just need to be able to connect with people and get across your vision and get them excited about it. And obviously, a lot of the times that will make people want it and to buy. I mean, if you look at Richard Branson, a really impressive figure who would be the I suppose, someone that had a personal brand even way back. The reason why he was so successful, in my opinion, is because people connected with him, people trusted him, people liked him. And if he released something, people straight away would expect it to be at a certain standard because they know of how he does his business and how he lives his life. And that's why people will pay just to attach his brand to their business, even if he has nothing to do with it. So I think as far as myths, it's about what a salesperson looks like. I think that's the biggest myth. I think the fact that when you're selling, you're generally selling something bad. And I think as well, another myth actually is people think that if the product's that good, it should sell itself. And again, that goes back to what I said before about confusion could be the biggest obstacle. It needs somebody to sometimes explain it, and not only explain it, but to make that person understand what this would look like in their life and how it fits. So, like, really, a car is an example of something that you should be able to buy off a website. You kind of roughly know all the components of a car, especially if you're into a specific car. You probably know the engine size. I don't know anything about cars, but probably know the power, the engine size, the spec. You've seen it 100 times on the road. You've probably been in your mate's version, it whatever. But it still requires somebody to be there, to explain, more sell you on the dream. Like, you're not just buying a piece of metal.
Yep.
You're buying the status that comes with that piece of metal. It's got nothing to do with actually it's more about how it makes you feel, how it makes you look. And somebody needs to build that story for you in your head. And that's why something as simple as a car that should be an off-the-shelf kind of sale does still require salespeople to do that for you.
Like it. Let's backtrack a bit. We'll go for talk about the journey then. So, worked in the bank for a bit. What then got you interested in business, and how did you start out?
Yeah, so basically, I worked at the bank, went to college to faff about for a bit, thought I wanted to go to uni, didn't make it through that. I worked as a cleaner, I've worked in retail, in fact, my cleaner, I've said it before, but that's my favourite job because I think it gave me time to daydream.
Nice.
Put my earphones in, daydream, think up ideas. I've worked in a supplement store selling supplements, which I learnt loads from. And then I eventually worked in doing not cold calling, inbound sales calls, which as far as sets and reps goes in anything, if you talk about 10,000 hours, it felt like sometimes I did 10,000 hours in a day. But that helped you learn a lot, loads of conversations, meeting different people. But then skip forward, like a lot of people probably listen to this podcast, I got into what I do now via the fitness industry. And I think the fitness industry is such a great gateway into business because I think you learn a crash course in multiple different skills. You learn how to communicate, you meet different people from different fields, you start to understand your customer, you need a bit of sales, you need a bit of marketing, you need a bit of customer service. So even as a one-man band, you kind of get a level one kind of crash course in a bit of everything, even copywriting, you know what I mean? You get loads of stuff. So I got into it via that. I was working full-time doing inbound sales when I started personal training on the side. To fast forward a little bit, I took on some clients, training them on the grass outside my flat. I would often cycle to work, do a 9 to 5, cycle back, chuck my bike on the ground because I didn't have chance to do anything other than greet my client and do 3 or 4 hours PT back to back before, but sometimes in the dark because it wasn't even lit up. Then I decided I wanted to go into a group training model, booked a church hall, asked them to turn the heating off to save money. We launched a group training that was 12 years ago. That eventually evolved into my first main business, which was called Evo Didsbury, which ended up being like the main group training business in the area before group training was huge. I'm not going to try and claim I invented it, but in my area, there was not much around. It was kind of your USP, just being group training. And then after that, learning the skills that I did running a business, while still my main skill being the sales side of things, really the process, and the sales itself. I ended up building quite a few businesses with similar business models, martial arts club, which I still run now, other small group personal training businesses. This time last year, I was running 7 or 8 different businesses with similar models, from music to beauty and fitness still. But I did a bit of a reset last year and stripped things back a little bit to make room for this new project.
So how much involvement did you have then if you're running 7 or 8 at one time?
I was involved in the way that I would kind of have a big involvement in the onboarding of a client. So I would be kind of doing, as far as an actual role I would do, I've always done the sales for all my businesses. So that's always I've always leveraged that skill to make my business probably grow quicker and more successful. Everything else I'd say I'm just okay at. Like I've had to develop decent leadership skills, hiring skills, building a team, all these kind of things which I've done for each business. And then I would, like I say, leverage my own sales skills while kind of being half decent at everything else. But day to day, a lot of them I wouldn't be involved with. I wouldn't generally be on site for any of them, to be honest. I mean, my business that I started originally, the group training business, Evo Didsbury, I sold it last year in September. I don't think I'd been on site that year. So, yeah, not a lot.
What's the process then of going from, like, you've got an idea and you start something up to then having staff, having a team, having processes? And the reason I ask is because a lot of people watching or listening to this are probably one man, one woman bands, probably writing copy or doing something in marketing or similar. And I think there's a huge bottleneck from going from, behind your laptop, doing stuff on your own. Maybe you have like 1 or 2 outsourcers, perhaps, to having what I would call a real business. And some people don't want that. Some people are more than happy to just be solo. Like, that's kind of me, to be honest. I don't want a big team. I don't want premises or anything. But what would your insights be into going from that, one person, maybe 2-person business into something that's a bit more of an asset, maybe that you could even sell in future?
I think, first of all, what a lot of people don't do, and I probably didn't do this until more recently, is decide what the business to look like when it's kind of fully grown. I think a lot of people, especially early on, they just kind of pile everything onto it. They'll take any kind of sales, they'll work with the wrong kind of clients who, and there's no such thing as a wrong client, but maybe they're not the right fit, so you end up adapting the business to the wrong type of avatar. I think they also will just reactively take on staff without thinking, what will this person do for me? Because I think as well, there's a lot of things in business that people think that they don't take any time, or I'm trying to think of the word, passive. Like hiring people, once you hire somebody and you give them their role, you don't do anything. Like buying properties, people just think passive income. I don't think there's any such thing as passive totally. Everything requires time, whether it's on the front end or even during. There's always going to be time during. And I think that's the biggest mistake. They'll hire staff thinking that everything's easy, but the more staff, you're multiplying everything. You're multiplying maybe your clients, but you're also multiplying drama, potential to be let down. All these little things are multiplied, and that's why I think you should squeeze everything out of all of your assets before you look to grow, whether that's your venue, because obviously another one is people will look to get a second location before they've maximised the first. And just to be clear, a lot of these things I'm pulling up are probably things that I've done and probably still do next week. But yeah, basically I think when you have a business like you've done, you could easily have hired multiple people, and I bet you've been tempted into it many times, but that actually probably goes away from what you're trying to build and your values, because if you have multiple staff or people that you work with, that's multiple people you've got to have a relationship with. And I think this time last year, that was something I'd really realised, that I think one of my biggest assets in business was building relationships with my staff. And as I scaled up, I think this time last year I had about 30, 40 staff. And also, so if you go back to the beginning where I had like 5 or 6 people, there were 5 or 6 people I had a great relationship with. I'd communicate with probably daily. We were all on the same wavelength. We were all building this vision. When you get to 40, and obviously it sounds silly because there's people probably listening to this with hundreds, but you end up having a really paper thin relationship with them.
Hmm.
And I think it leaves room for them to misunderstand sometimes where you're trying to take the business or what you want, or even like, let's say you used to speak to them daily and now you speak to them monthly. Like, it's normal human behavior to think, who do they think they are, or why do they not speak to me as much now, or they've got big for the boots, when in reality I'm probably at home bogged down with stuff that I don't even want to do because I've created this monster in business that actually is giving me the lifestyle I didn't want in the first place. Because when I originally created my businesses, it was about doing things I enjoyed, building projects, and really getting that buzz. But this time last year, I felt like I was just spending all day reacting to things because I'd multiplied everything so much that there wasn't many days I was waking up and thinking, what can I get stuck into? I would often be thinking, right, first things first, let's sort that fire alarm out that's ringing. Do you know what I mean? Because when you've got quite a few plates spinning, there will always be little things to be reacting to, I think. And a lot of people have much bigger businesses than me that maybe feel like they don't have to react as much, but clearly I'd scaled up too quickly.
I think it's interesting because I've been on the opposite side of that, working in a contracted position as a copywriter. And there was one company I joined when I think I was probably about the 7th or 8th person there. And the culture was amazing. Excuse me, very tight knit. We didn't have like super regular meetings, but we would meet sort of once every 2 weeks, as a team, just on Zoom or whatever. But it felt very tight knit. Then I think we expanded to probably about 20, 25 over the course of, say, maybe a year. And it lost a bit of that. And then I remember meetings became more frequent, but less got done. Like, the culture wasn't as strong. And then there was another jump up to expand into about 40, 45. And you really felt it lost a lot of what kind of made it special to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think you're right. Like, I'm sure for different businesses, there are different tipping points and there are ways to overcome that. But from both the business owner standpoint and from whether it's employees, contractors, freelancers, however you want to put it, there's definitely that feeling, I think, of loss of culture. And I suppose it's very difficult to retain that as you get bigger, I suppose.
It is, and that's why I think when people scale up or build the businesses, they should be able to sit down and thinking, what does this do to... Because I think it's like food. There's no such thing as a good and a bad food. They add things and they take things away potentially. It's the same with scaling up. Like, if I add 5 more staff, we get this, but it also takes away this. Like, I think a lot of people, when they have small businesses, they believe that you can scale up everything, including culture and goodwill. Even in the early days, you might have a small team, and then people are willing to go above and beyond. And this isn't my case. Yes, people did do that, but it's in everyone's case where you've got this small culture, you've got a really good relationship. So if you ask them to stay for an extra hour because there's a leak, they probably do it. Whereas when there's 30, nobody's kind of the one that wants to step up and do it, and they don't feel as connected. So I just think when you are scaling up or you're building businesses, be aware of the differences that it'll have, good and bad. And because a lot of the time as well, people say to grow the business. It might be to just add an extra 5% on top of the revenue. And obviously we all want growth, but is that 5% worth the 20% that you lose in culture, the 20% you lose in peace of mind, and the fact that you can go away every other weekend, whereas when you add that extra 5% revenue, suddenly you're stuck to the business a little bit more. So there is always things that will be added and things that will be taken away when you grow. And same with the opposite direction. If you were to scale back down in a business, it's going to affect everything in a different way too.
And I guess business has to work for you, which is something that probably isn't spoken about enough, I don't think. And you just saying that leads me nicely on to what I want to talk about next, which is more the lifestyle standpoint and kind of how you run your business. So what does a typical day look like for you at the moment then?
At the moment, it really varies. I've got a 2.5-year-old, so when I've got him, I have him 3 to 4 days a week. My week will look different. It always starts with a nursery drop-offs, nursery pickups, and it's quite funny because I don't have a typical day because of that, because when I'm doing those, I will then base myself near the nursery for a lot of the day, which is in the south part of Manchester. Whereas when I don't have him, I'll stay closer to home, which is North Manchester. So, but a typical day will be often meeting new clients, meeting current clients, and working on ideas, and that's how I want to work. So what I realised this time last year is I was hidden behind a laptop the majority of the time, reacting, like I said, or even just checking in with people, never off my phone. That was the best way to leverage my time to get across everything and everyone. Whereas I feel like I mean, I feel like I'm under pressure now being in a podcast saying this, but I'm a more in people person, a more in person. So I get a buzz off being around other people and sharing ideas. And I like to do business with a handshake still, building relationships, as I mentioned quite a bit. And that's why this time last year, I took a step back and think I would need to build businesses that are allowing me to be doing the things day in, day out that I want to be doing, which is something I've always admired about yourself. I mean, from the outside looking in, it looks like you've kind of built a business. It doesn't mean you don't have to work hard, and it doesn't mean that you're in Bali every weekend either, but you've built something that allows you to live the way you want to live, and that's something that I realised this time last year I had to get back to, because I always thought when I build these businesses at a certain point, I'm going to keep stepping back, but in reality, I was going further away from that. So I've now built a business where it is going back to meeting people, doing good work as well. Because I think as I scaled up, I felt like what we were doing was getting diluted as well. And now I've kind of scaled down with what I'm doing. I feel really passionate about it. And same with what we were saying before about sales, my business feels like an extension of me and my values. But yeah, a typical day is being in front of people, working on projects that excite me, working with other business owners as well, which I really enjoy doing, which I've actually not done as much of before. That I've done consultancy before and I've been involved in mentorships, but day in, day out, really, I was more dealing with customers. So now my customers are businesses and I'm really enjoying that. And I kind of took a little bit of a step back to build something new, but I don't regret it for a second. I'm really enjoying it.
Nice. So what's your process like with customers then? What kind of businesses do you like to work with? And let's say I come to you with a problem, how do you help me fix it, essentially?
Yeah, so obviously what we do is basically take over people's sales departments, and we're typically working with two types of clients. Either somebody that's maybe an owner-operator and doing the sales themselves. Often they're doing the sales and the thing. So if your thing is fitness, you might be still coaching. Or if you're a copywriter, you might be still doing a lot of the copywriting. Or if you're a carpenter, you're still getting your hands dirty and building things. And often that person really enjoys doing the thing, but they don't enjoy doing the sales that come with the thing, or they don't feel comfortable selling what they are, which is the product. So what we will do is plug into their business and represent them better than they can represent themselves, give them a world-class sales process, which allows their product to scale up. Whereas what a lot of owner-operators do, they have a great product because they probably went into business because they're really good at the thing, but their business sales department is beyond poor because they're responding to people around doing the thing, which is at times it probably doesn't suit the customer. They kind of hold off trying to help people get over the line, because we said before about I won't be super pushy, but I will try and actually get an outcome. What a lot of people will do is go, yeah, we do this. I don't even ask a question or give a call to action. They almost put the onus on the customer to drive this conclusion. Whereas obviously we'll be making sure that we make it very clear what we do. We make a really clear path to the outcome and getting the sale. We have a really clear onboarding. We take the money for the business owner and ultimately bring their world-class sales department up in line with their world-class product, which, as we all know, it makes sense then the things are going to blow up a bit more than they were doing before. Plus, save them a load of time. And going back to what I said about myself, I was doing day in, day out things that I didn't want to be doing. They've started the business to do the thing. They love carpentry or whatever it is. So why have they built a business that then ends up making them do sales day in, day out and hiring somebody else to do what they wanted to do in the first place? So that's one type of person we work with. Or maybe they've already scaled it to a point where they do require a sales team, but sales team in-house require training, and often you aren't the person to do the training because you don't like it yourself, and they can be stressful, as we said before, having more staff, more people to train, more people to be responsible for, more people to performance manage. They can just outsource it to us at a fraction of the cost, to be honest, and they can get rid of us in an instant if it's not working and have a really clear relationship. So that's the kind of people we work with. And to go back to the original question of how that looks, again, I'm trying to keep this as bespoke as possible. I'm not looking to scale this to a point where they fill in a quick form and we give everyone generic advice. I will literally, if the local, go and meet them, find out about the business and explain to them how I think we would plug in and how we would be best leverage for them, depending on their business model. Some people, again, the exciting thing for them is I'm going to get all this time back. I'm going to be able to pick my son up from nursery or my kids up from school. Whereas that would be when I'd be doing the sales calls. Or it might be I'm going to save a load of money or have peace of mind to know that it's being done properly. So bespoke onboarding, I'm going to meet them, literally find out and tell them if I think it's a fit, and if it is, how we would fit. Then we would literally go away and do all their onboarding, build the systems, and put into place what we've kind of agreed would be a good fit for their business. And then we set a start date, and we literally take over everything and run things on their behalf from that start date. Have regular check-ins too, and really my goal is to work with people long term. So as we go along, it gets smoother and clearer, and obviously enjoy working with the person as well, because that's another thing I want to do. When I work with business owners, that I want to see win, and they also hopefully refer us to other people too.
Nice. And how do you set that up so that you still have time for what you want to do? You know, personal stuff, having fun, the freedom side of things. What's your philosophy or mantra, or even just strategies for doing that?
Yeah, so I know where I'm going with this business. So at the minute, I'm doing some of the actual sales, which I think is important at this time. It's not like I've not got enough experience doing it yet, but not in these systems and working for other people so much. So I'm doing some of the sales, but mainly my role in this business right now is to be the face of it, be building relationships, doing the actual sales, which is not a pushy sales system. It's literally go and speak to them, figure it out, and prescribe what I think we should be doing for them. And to cut a long story short, my goal is to step away from doing the actual uh, in-house sales for the businesses and just continue to be the face of the business. And the reason that allows me flexibility is because my diary will be based on bookings that I book in myself. So if I went on holiday, I just don't put any bookings in that week, and I book everybody in for the following week. And my goal really is to spend my day kind of driving to one location in the morning, meeting a business owner, talking business, talking ideas, see if it's a good fit. Then maybe jumping on a couple of calls from home in the afternoon. But again, being in a position where I can clear Thursday to go and do a walk in the lakes, or clear Friday to watch YouTube.
Nice. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because a lot of people are trying to get away from that in-person aspect, and I
Yeah.
found that as well. That's kind of one of the reasons why, like I said, I was looking for a co-working space. It was not because I'm not a particularly chatty person. I'm not extroverted at all, but being around people, like I hate working from, well, hate's a strong word. I don't like working from home because I need to be around other people, hence the whole coffee shop thing for me. But same, I love hosting in-person events. I find them stressful to put on, but I love doing it, and I get that buzz from
Yeah.
being around people. And I think people neglect that too often. They're like, oh, I can earn my living from my laptop, so that's all I'm going to do. And then most people, even introverted people, I think you end up a bit lonely, you end up isolated, and you probably flip back to then actually trying to spend more time with people once you realise the
Yeah.
reality of it.
Yeah, I think that's a normal journey in business. I think a lot of people listening to this podcast at some point probably thought the goal is to end up doing nothing. Leverage their time so much that they basically do an hour a week of checking in or whatever it is. Some people might actually do nothing, and then they realise that that is a quick route to depression. Really, I think we need purpose, and that's why I admire what you do, because you look very busy, but you're busy doing things on your terms, and doing the things you enjoy and leveraging your skill set to make the most money, I guess, but also not sacrificing things that you value. So my goal now is to be quite busy, but knowing that at any moment I could free up time. Like, my overall kind of goal with business is to have freedom, but that's got nothing to do with being behind a laptop on the beach. It's to have the freedom to choose. That was what somebody said to me a few years back, and I thought it was a really good point. It was just, I might want to work, but I also love the idea that if I would have been all this off tomorrow, I could.
Yeah.
Depending on my mood and things. So, and I also want to be able to choose the work I want to do, stuff that makes me buzz, like you just said with your events. I get a buzz of being around other people, sharing ideas, doing good work. That's an important thing for me, like actually performing in what I do. But at the same time, if I wake up tomorrow morning and I'm not feeling it, I want to be able to know that there's always an option to. I mean, I don't want to let people down. I'll follow through with meetings, but certain things can be rearranged, and I think that's really important, because I don't think there's many people on this planet that will get to the point of doing nothing and actually be happy a year later.
I often think that if you're that type of person, you probably don't have the drive to build something in the first place. I remember years ago, I had, when I was doing personal training, so like a decade ago, had a client who had a very successful construction firm, sold it for about 30 million quid, I think. Within 3 months of selling it, he'd had 3 months, didn't do a whole lot. He started up another small construction firm, like a family-owned one, and said, "Oh, we're just going to do bespoke projects, keep it very small. I just want something to keep me busy." Now, what's that? Probably 8-9 years on, I see their signs up for projects everywhere. And like clearly, he's the type of person who built that company to the point of a £30 million sale. Thought, "Oh, I'll probably just do nothing," but just his natural drive, his natural work ethic has then made him go and build something that chances are it's going to be as big as that first one.
Yeah.
Again, because he's almost addicted to that. Maybe not addicted to success, but addicted to just the process of building something, I think.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's probably me. I love building things. I've certainly not built anything to that level, but I really enjoy kind of having an idea, recruiting people, because often I will go to a lot. I mean, you're probably the same, and I almost end up going to a lot of the same people. So I have an idea, but like, I've got this idea, you're going to be part of it. I love recruiting people onto my vision and then seeing it grow. And I think the difference is now I've grown things, and when they've kind of got to the point where I was happy with, then I kind of get really bored just doing the day to day and kind of continuously looking for micro goals. I enjoy that kind of turning nothing into something. And ultimately, I think now with this new business, I know that even when it's kind of hopefully built, we're going to be meeting new people all the time, and it's ultimately completely fresh work all the time, and every client's different, and that's what excites me about it.
Like it. The one thing I wanted to touch on, a bit of a change of gears, but I heard you speaking in another podcast about how you do a lot of sales kind of via text rather than via phone call. How do you think AI is going to change stuff, or how is it changing stuff already? I'd imagine that text is somewhere that can have a big impact, but what are you seeing and what do you predict for the future?
I like the way you said you heard me in another podcast. It makes you sound feel like a proper celebrity. Yeah, so this business is built around text message. So there's a couple of reasons for that. So obviously I've done pretty much every form of sales you can do, face-to-face, calls, texts. And 10 years ago in the fitness industry, because I know a lot of people listening to this will have gyms and stuff, everything had to be calls. So the reason being is because when a product doesn't quite align with people's perceived value, you need to have a chat with somebody to increase that perceived value. So let's say back in the day we'd have a group training product. Let's say it was £150. If we just literally told people that on an email or a text, they would just not respond, because in their head, fitness or a coach or whatever should be around about whatever Pure Gym were charging at the time. And we used to have calls like that. What do you mean it's this much? Pure Gym's this. And people were so uneducated on the product and uninformed that we had to get them on a call to inform them and educate them, and obviously price anchor and all these kind of terms to get the idea up. But the industry's changed so much in 10 years. The average person is way more educated on that product now. If you were to speak to somebody, they've either done something similar at a similar price point, or they know somebody that's done something similar at that price point. So you don't need these long calls. And what's also changed in the last 10 years is I've gone from somebody that would answer my phone if somebody called me to a person that would rather throw my phone off a bridge than answer a phone call that I don't know who it is. Even when I know who the person is. Like, let's be clear, if I rang everybody's phone within 100 feet of this building, like, probably get one answer out of 100. If I text everybody's phone, especially if I know them, they'll answer. Like, how many times will you have people like 7 p.m. a friend ring you, you're looking at it ringing out, and then they'll message you and you'll get straight back.
Yeah.
People are way more likely to communicate now via message, a little bit less invasive form of communication than a phone call. So to get back to the point, we've switched it all. Well, in my actual businesses, I switched all of my sales tactics from calls to text. And not for a second. I mean, I have done this in some of my marketing. Sales calls are dead, and somebody I know has recommended to do that, but I don't believe they're dead. I just think they're nowhere near as a good use of your time as they once was. So I believe if you have 10 people, 10 leads, you might get 5 sales from sales calls, but I believe now that you would also get 5 sales from text. The difference is you might get 1 or 2 different people, depending on the actual type of process you're taking. Because if you do the calls, you might convince 1 or 2 on the phone that maybe wouldn't have bought via text. They needed that call, they needed that persuasion. But I do believe with text, you get 1 or 2 people that you wouldn't have sold to on the call, because they probably wouldn't have done the call in the first place. So, and I would rather have those people. that were ready to buy, they respected the product, they're action takers. Because once you actually get them on board, they're probably going to be easier clients to deal with, rather than when you actually have people that needed to be sold to on the call. They're the kind of people that can be talked out of it very quickly as well and change their mind. But really the main reason is, more than anything, is how long does sales calls take out of your week? Let's say you've got a business where your ceiling's 100 customers. To maintain 100 customers, you're probably doing 10 hours of sales calls a week. And if you only sell to, say, 2 of them, it's been a huge waste of your time. Whereas if you do text, we can obviously make the whole thing way more efficient. And look, it's not just simply text them. We like to think we're experts in that field. We will be building bespoke scripts. We will be manually messaging and understanding how to sell via text. We're doing this for a long time. It's not a recent thing, but it's way more efficient. And to cut a long story short, as far as our service, if we were charging you to do our service for sales calls, we would be charging you 3 or 4 times the amount because of the amount of time it takes. Whereas with text messaging, we can charge way less and do just as good an outcome for you. Plus, there's many better reasons than that. One, it's easier to manage and maintain and understand and keep track of the leads. It's easy to be consistent because you could have someone that shit out sales calls and then they leave and you're giving this guy or this girl to do them who hates them and it just drops. So you're really reliant on your quality of salespeople. With text, there's a little bit more, there's a bit more trainable. Plus, I just think, to go back to what I said before about relationships, it's a way better experience for the customer, because I've actually had an example recently where I actually got in touch with a consultant, and I'm a salesman's dream. If I like your product, I'll just buy it. I don't need to waste your time. I'm not going to ask you every question under the sun. I almost come in with an approach of, I don't ask as many questions as I probably have because I don't want to be annoying. But anyway, I got in touch with this person. How much is your product? Won't tell me. They won't tell me because they think I'm going to run away. I actually expect it to be quite high. When I found out the price indirectly, I thought that's really reasonable. Wouldn't tell me. I just like using really cheesy language that just felt fake. And I'm like, you're really putting me off here, but I'm still here. I'm still talking. And then I was like, can I just find out your packages? Because I do want to be involved in some way. They're like, you'll have to book in with a call with our team. And then I just thought, I know what this is going to be. I'm going to be on a phone with a closer, which is fine. But if you, in my opinion, if your product requires a closer, and by closer I mean somebody that's going to be on commission, calling you out on your mindset and things like this, then maybe make the product a little bit more attractive, in my opinion. But anyway, I wanted to do the service, but I actually just thought, forget it. I'm not going to call the closer for an hour who's going to be backing me into corners verbally and calling me out, and I just don't have the time. And I know for a fact as well, and this happens loads with customers, if I book that call, probably going to cancel it 5 minutes before it, because when it comes time for the call, I'm like, why have I booked this call? Yeah. The last thing I want to do right now is get on a call with somebody who's hyped up, probably just done 20 press-ups and had a Red Bull just to get them in the mode to kind of get me over the line, where I'm just chilled. I'm like, I actually want it. Let's just work together. Let's be normal. To speak to me like a human. But they actually lost a sale because I didn't want to jump on a call. Yeah. Whereas they should, at bare minimum, for me, have an option to be like, if you're actually really asking for it, here's the info. And I'm not just going to give it you and let you run away. And we'll be like, how does that sound? And so you can still have a really good quality text process and messaging process that's less invasive. And also, I don't have an hour at 10 a.m. tomorrow. I'm probably going on my own calls. I know that contradicts things, but my calls are required because I'm building a relationship. I'm not closing them. I'm actually listening about the business, etc. But for me, if your only process now is sales calls, you're missing out on loads of sales. At bare minimum, you should have both, in my opinion. But for a lot of our clients, just having a proper sales process, whether it's text, calls, whatever, is going to massively upgrade what they're doing currently.
We're probably very similar in that regard. I remember maybe 3 years ago, I had to do a call about a coaching program I was interested in. And in my head, I was thinking this program's going to be sort of 5K, maybe 10 at a push, but I was like 5, probably around that ballpark. And I remember sitting through about 45 minutes on a call where, again, I don't do traditional sales calls, but I could basically tell what was going to come next with every single question. And by the time I got to the price reveal, I think the price was like 2K, 3K, something like that. And he said to me, oh, how's that sound? I went, I thought it was going to be more than that. And you could tell he was so shocked at that, that he could have just sent, I didn't sign up at the end because the same reason as you, I was like, I've not enjoyed that sales process. The course looked good, but you just came across as inauthentic. Whereas actually, if he'd have just sent me some stuff, or at the beginning of the call said, okay, we've got a couple of options, here's option A, option B, how does that sound, what do you think, and then gone into questions after that, probably would have signed up. But as it was, I just thought, no, that's not for me, basically.
Yeah, and I don't think they understand how I've put it is, and I think that it's quite negative because they're assuming everyone's going to think it's expensive and everyone's going to require to be dragged through this journey to get them to the point where they don't think it's expensive. And don't get me wrong, if you've got a really like chilled sales process, and ours aren't chilled, we're following up properly and we're price anchoring, which basically just means we're getting them to get the idea of where our price is higher based on the onboarding and the discussion and the kind of value we're adding. But I had a completely different experience with someone that you both know, and like that basically I could tell that they vetted me a little bit on the messages just to make sure that I was at a certain level and I wasn't going to be shocked at anything. But then just come on a call, chilled, matched my energy, told me what it was, what they'd do, not selling to me, just like, this is what I do. And it made me really want it, and I signed up. So, and also as well, if your product's good and you've got the kind of social proof to back that up, and I've done this, I've done that, even if we didn't work together, well, it's not because of me and it's not because of you, it just didn't work. And I think there's a lot of power in that. And I also believe in things like money back guarantees and stuff. I think when I was younger, I would hate to give a refund. I still would do it, but I would kind of go, are you sure on this? And you sign this, and all that would happen is every night I'd go to bed and be like thinking about it. I'd be raging inside. It's only if I was right, of course. Now I just refund immediately. Keep the relationship, as we touched on earlier. And life's too short. I think you just waste loads of your time and energy on things like that. And ultimately, if you've got a good product and a good business, the odd refund won't affect things anyway. And I mean, it's different if the refund is based on you being rubbish, but if you just have started, it's not a good fit, then there's no hard feelings.
Yep, agreed. We'll wrap up with the quick fire 5 in a minute, but first of all, tell people where they can get in touch with you if they want to find out more.
Yes, I'm on Instagram at Josh Aghdam. Website saleshero.uk. That's probably the two best places to find me at the minute, to be honest.
Perfect, cool. So quick fire 5 then. If you could gift one marketing, copywriting, business, sales or mindset book to anybody, what would it be and why?
Probably the E-Myth, a classic one, probably been said 9 out of 10 times already. But I just think the E-Myth is a great example of starting with the end in mind, building a business that's efficient, that's not reliant on anyone or any one system. And obviously the whole book is about building a business that's ready to sell, which even if I think a lot of people build a business when they don't want to, they have no intention of selling. But obviously building a business that is sellable means that it's a lot more enjoyable for you to run. I think we often do things that we would never do in our own businesses if somebody else was going to come in and take over. But you end up realizing that those things that you're doing that you think are okay because you're running it, actually you end up hating yourself. So I think it's a great book, and the other reason I like it is it's not boring. It's actually a story, isn't it? I like stories. We all like stories. So that would be my number one.
Perfect. You and I are going for a coffee and I'm buying. What's your order?
So I always used to have an Americano. This is such a boring reason, but I changed to flat white because I don't care that much, first of all. It's just a coffee. But second, I just got so sick because I put a bit of milk in. I got so sick of pouring milk in and it just went down the side of the cup. And I'd always have a pool of milk at the bottom. So the flat white probably has a bit too much milk in for me, but it's better than dripping milk down me all the time. So I had to switch.
I like that reason.
Big decision.
Nice one. Perfect. Question number 3. You're in charge of the internet for a day and you can get rid of any social media platform. Which one are you going to choose?
Probably X. I don't use it. Never have. I know a lot of people love it. I literally don't use it. I think I created an account about 10 years ago and I just use it to snoop now and again. But yeah, I'll ever hear from its negative stuff as well. Or TikTok, because I don't know, is it still all dances? Maybe.
Do you know, I've never had a TikTok account.
Yeah,
X is definitely a bit Marmite. I've got an account. I do a reasonable bit of browsing, but I do zero posting on there. Do
you know what's annoying actually about TikTok? It probably changed soon, but people keep sending me links to like funny videos on TikTok, and I can never look at them because I don't have an account. I used to be able to look on them, but now I can't, so that's quite annoying. So yeah, get rid of TikTok.
Got it. You're going to host a dinner party, and you can have any 3 people, living or dead. Who are you going to invite?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm definitely gonna go home later and think of way better people, but probably a sports person, Muhammad Ali, classic one, inspirational, loads of good stories. I'd probably have a comedian in there, maybe Ricky Gervais. Um, Obviously love all of his TV series and his work, and obviously bring a bit of comedy. And then I chuck a Mancunian in there, so I'm gonna have Emmeline Pankhurst,
Nice, good mix.
someone with some proper intelligence in there, and some also good stories to tell.
Excellent, I like it. And then finally, if someone wanted to do what you're doing today, what would be the best bit of advice you could give them?
Um, I think build it around your own skills. I think a lot of people will imitate other people's businesses, and ultimately it's not a fit because it's not them. I'm a real believer. I've said it quite a few times in this podcast that we've all got our own skills and our own like nuances and personality traits and things like that, and build it around you because there's been many times I've had interactions with people and then I meet them and I'm like, it doesn't fit at all. I want my business and my values online to be just the same as if you meet me in person. And I think you don't have to go through this kind of like, who am I and all this later on in the business and I don't like what I've built because you just stated literally who you are and what you are and what you believe in. So, and obviously going back to what I said before, just start with the end in mind, knowing what business you want to build because it's dead cheesy, but you end up building this like out of control monster that you've got no control of anymore. So I think just start with the end in mind, know what you want to build, and it's okay as well to say I don't want to make millions.
Mhm.
Like I want a really efficient 100k a year business that I earn a good living from. I don't have to be around any knobheads, and I like what I'm doing rather than £1 million business that you can't maintain for more than 5 years.
Fantastic. I think that's great advice. So yeah, cheers, Josh. Really appreciate you coming on, mate. And I shall pop links to everything that you mentioned in the description. Again, thank you everyone for watching. I'll put links to all the FKS stuff down there as well. As always, any questions for me, any questions for Josh, just leave them in the comments. Otherwise, any likes, shares, subscribes, always appreciated. And I shall catch you next time round.